It's been a transformational offseason for the Seahawks at the receiver position. DK Metcalf's gone. Tyler Lockett's gone. Could Tory Horton be part of the answer to solving all that lost production? We're going to find out from his former college coach today on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s listening in, whether you're in Tacoma, Washington, or listening down in Phoenix, Arizona. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are continuing our NFL Draft Coaches series, and we are shifting gears to fifth-round pick Tory Horton. And today is going to be a fascinating one as we bring in new USC tight ends and inside receivers coach Chad Savage, who previously coached receivers at Colorado State. Coach Savage, we greatly appreciate having you here on Locked On Seahawks.
I appreciate it, Corbin. I appreciate it, Rob. Excited to speak with you guys today and Seahawk Nation. You guys are getting a great one with Tory Horton.
Coach, you have a really interesting perspective compared to all the other coaches that we have interviewed up to this point, because you were at Nevada when Tory Horton was there in 2021, but you were coaching tight ends at that point. You were not the receiver coach, but you knew who Tory Horton was. Obviously had a really good season there before transferring. You go to Colorado State, and you suddenly become the receivers coach. But before you had that role, kind of as an outsider's perspective, from the sense you weren't coaching his position group, what were the first impressions that you had of Tory Horton when you were down in Reno coaching tight ends?
So rewind that 2 years before. So I was a wide receiver graduate assistant at the University of Nevada, and my task was at the time just comb through, jump forward, and look at recruits. And I comb through our jump forward list, and I see Tory Horton's name. And so, whoa, his name jumps off. And he caught our attention. And so I went out, I reached out, got Tory's transcript, and then I brought it to the table. And so that was back in 2019. And I actually went through that. I sent Tory that screenshot the other day of back in 2019 as a GA. I messaged him asking for his transcript because I was the receiver GA at the time, combing through recruits.
Wow, that's an incredible perspective there that you're providing. And I appreciate that. Just as a high school teacher myself, to be honest with you, I have a lot of college coaches who are kind of asking me for a perspective on some of our athletes. I want to kind of just first off, Coach, thank you so much. Just want to echo what Corbin just said. Thank you so much for just joining us. And, you know, as when we break down Tory Horton's game, I think that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to focus in on the fact that this is a guy who is just under 6'3". He's 196 pounds. It feels like he was like, you know, Willie Mays Hayes, because he's coming off the injury and just kind of stumbles out of bed, runs a 4.41 electronic time at the combine, and just kind of wows people. But I think that there's this perception that he's a straight line speed guy. I love the fact that you're now at USC, and congratulations, Coach. That's awesome. But I think sometimes, again, people will stereotype wide receivers who have this height, have the straight line speed, and they don't really acknowledge his juice, his lateral agility. And I have the belief that Tory Horton can do just about anything on the field, including as a return guy. So can you just explain to us why, or, you know, how do you feel that Tory Horton might be able to make an impact in the NFL, whether it be on the outside, whether it be on the inside, or whether it be as a return man, or all of the above?
No doubt. Yeah, it's when you look at Tory, I think complete wide receiver. And there's always going to be those receivers you pigeonhole as an inside guy or as an outside guy, or maybe they're a vertical speed guy. But a true punt returner has to have some kind of lateral movement. And Tory Horton was one of the best punt returners in college football. And so that speaks and answers the question, does Tory have the lateral movements? Tory for sure has the lateral movements. He's got the juice. He's got the short area quickness. He's got the one cut ability. And he's got the ability to take the top off. But what I think what's going to get Tory on the field early on in his career is his high mental capacity. He's a quick learner, and I know NFL playbooks can have a lot of volume and be lengthy with their terminology, but Tory's going to have the mental capacity to process that to play early on.
Yeah, I know the Seahawks had already mentioned that when John Schneider and Mike McDonald were talking post-draft. That was one of the first things that jumped out to them about Tory Horton's game. And as you mentioned, you've known Tory for a long time. You've known him since he was a recruit, and you had 1 year that you were away from Nevada, then came back and got to see this kid where he was at development-wise, and then you got to coach him the last 3 years at Colorado State. From the time that you got to coach him in Fort Collins, what were the areas that you saw that he made the biggest stride to become a two-time 1,000-yard receiver and was on pace to do it again last year before the injury? Where did you see his game blossom the most as far as transforming into a viable NFL prospect while putting up those big numbers?
Really growing into his body and playing with body strength. Because early on in his career, Tory was frail, right? He had that frail frame. But as he continued to get stronger and stronger in our weight program and really dial in with his nutrition, he got stronger. And so he was stronger at the line of scrimmage versus press. He was stronger with contested catches with DBs on his back. And he was one of our most willing, tough, and most physical blockers in the run game too. And so that all came together over the course of years. And then just working on top routes, understanding how to separate versus certain leverages with DBs. But he's a guy that showed up ready to work every single day, and he always had that itch to get better. And some of the best practice habits I've ever seen. And really, the sky is the limit for Tory Horton. And he comes from an incredible family, a first-class family, who's humble. They're hardworking. And, I mean, the Seahawks, you guys got a great receiver and even a better person in Tory Horton.
Well, again, I think that if the USC thing doesn't work out, Coach, then I think that you might be able to qualify as his agent as well, just because you're doing such lofty praise here about Tory Horton. I'm kind of curious because I say that because the question I'm going to ask might sound a little bit disrespectful to some out there. And I just mean that – I mean this with the ultimate respect. But
Corbin, I lost him.
Yeah, it looks like he just froze. Yeah. What he was going to ask – Rob, you froze there for a second. He's back on, so –
well, hopefully I'll be able to – hey, again, it's disrespectful.
It must have been super disrespectful.
Well, and so I was going to just kind of acknowledge the fact that the Mountain West Conference just doesn't get as much credit as it deserves. Seahawks fans should know the Mountain West Conference have a great deal of respect for it. I mean, there's a certain, future Hall of Fame middle linebacker, Bobby Wagner, of course, as a star in the Mountain West Conference in the WAC. But I want to kind of talk for just a moment about your experience now at USC in the Big Ten Conference. If Tory Horton was now a member of the USC Trojans, do you think that he would have had as much success?
He would be able to play. I don't even have to let that question finish. He would be able to play.
Well, exactly. And do you think that he would have the same type of success as a receiver as well as a returner as he had for Nevada and, of course, with Colorado State?
Yes, we have some really good receivers here at USC, but a good player can play the game of football. And he's an NFL caliber player. He can play in the Big Ten Conference. That just comes back down to recruiting and a team in Nevada at the time taking a chance on a guy like Tory. But he's got the skill set and the ability to play at the highest level of college football. And I think that's what shows. I mean, we were fighting for our lives to keep him at Colorado State 2 years ago because every team in America was trying to get him in the portal to go play in the Power Four conferences. Because they saw
that's an interesting follow-up for me, Coach, because I've noticed this at least with the Seahawks, and I actually saw it yesterday. I believe there was a study that was published, and it's incredible how much more NFL teams value guys that stay put and don't go into the transfer portal versus the ones that do transfer. And the Seahawks, there's a number of guys they just drafted in this class who had opportunities. Gray Zabel, their first-round pick, playing at North Dakota State, he had teams in the FBS level just throwing cash at him, and he said, you know what? I'm going to stay here. I want to finish my time at North Dakota State, finish what I started. How much do you think that adds value or it provides context for a kid's character coming into the NFL? Because it does seem like teams are really valuing that right now.
Yeah, it shows coaches a lot. And I mean, there's always two sides of the story when someone's factoring and thinking about the transfer portal, because sometimes there's life-changing money, or sometimes a coach leaves and there's better opportunity, whatever it may be. Like Tory did transfer with us from Nevada to Colorado State, but his head coach, his offensive coaching staff's going with him. So obviously there's different circumstances there, but for him to stay there and to finish and get his degree from Colorado State, when at times he could have left and got a lot of money from a big Power 4 school, shows you what kind of player he is and what kind of person he is. He's humble, he's loyal, and I think loyalty goes a long way nowadays. And he's a guy that really trusts the people around him. He trusts our plan of development. And at the same time, he made some of his best friends at Colorado State, and he didn't want to leave or turn his back on them. And he had his eyes set on something. He wanted to finish that mission.
Well, again, Coach, I just love the fact that you're giving us that perspective about
like
who Tory
I don't mean to interrupt, but one thing that, and I feel bad for Tory, but because he had that knee injury this last season, but one thing he wanted to do to come back to Colorado State was obviously get that degree, but he wanted to go back to Fresno, California, and play at Fresno State in front of his hometown. He wasn't able to do that because of the injury, but that's just something that shows what kind of person Tory is.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, like, my wife's not going to be thrilled about that. She's a Fresno State fan, and a Fresno State graduate, and so more importantly, and so, so maybe she won't be quite as much of a Tory Horton fan based on that answer. But I just, it's that perspective that we so greatly appreciate what you were able to provide us here. So thank you. And that's going to kind of tie me into or lead me to this next question. I think that it's just the nature of the business. You're as a coach, me as a draft analyst, and as a media reporter here for the Seahawks here. That it's the nature of the business to use player comparisons. When I see Tory Horton physically, he reminds me of a player that I saw back at the East-West Shrine game, when it was called the East-West Shrine game, right? The East-West Shrine Bowl. The name of Jacoby Jones, who was an All-Pro caliber returner, also a wide receiver with the Houston Texans for a long time there, Baltimore Ravens as well. And we just had another established draft analyst in Thor Nystrom, who used the comparison to Rashad Bateman, former first-round selection out of Minnesota, and of the Baltimore Ravens. Interestingly enough, of course, previously Mike McDonald's squad. I mention all of this, Coach, because I realize that the perspective that you have as far as who Tory is as a man, not just as a player, makes it complicated to use any type of a player comparison. But is there anybody out there in the NFL and college football that you think is an adequate comparison to what the Seahawks are going to be getting with Tory Horton?
Yeah, I think some of those names that you mentioned do have some similarities. I don't know. I mean, from a practice habit standpoint, we had Romeo Dobbs. His practice habits, they were incredible. They just showed up and worked every single day. From a playmaking standpoint, or true receiver standpoint, I've heard the comparisons of Pickens and Cortland Sutton. Those are some different names that people have mentioned in the past. I see some similarities there, but I think everyone's unique in their own way. And I think once Tory gets going for your guys' team, you guys will be able to see what kind of player he really is.
Yeah, I really fans would be excited about George Pickens' talent, because at least from the talent perspective, that there's a big time talent in the NFL.
For sure.
Let's talk X's and O's here for just a second, Coach. I'll have you put your offensive coordinator hat on for just a second. And you mentioned with his ability to play all over the formation, but if you are a play caller and you're trying to scheme up ways that you can accentuate the true strengths in Tory Horton's game, and I'm not saying you have to give Klint Kubiak advice necessarily. Klint Kubiak's been an offensive coordinator for a while, but if you're asked for advice because you've coached this guy and you've been around him for a long time, how do you, from an X's and O's standpoint, truly maximize his strengths and what really makes him tick as a playmaker?
And I know it's going to sound cliche, but insane anywhere, but really depending on the defense's weaknesses, he can have success on the outside or on the inside. And we did that at times at Colorado State. he was mainly our outside guy on the right. But at times we would short motion him or line him up on the inside just so we could get a mismatch versus a safety nickel or a backer. And he had the feel for space where you could get the ball in his hands in a quick game or intermediate passing game, and he could still stretch the field on the outside. And so he's got the ability to do it all. I think it just depends on the weaknesses you're trying to attack from a coordinator standpoint, but he's got the speed to take the top off, and he's got enough savviness to play inside too to understand space in the intermediate passing game.
Yeah, and that's what I have to just jump in here for a quick follow-up as far as the savviness to play in space and to be that underneath target. Again, Coach, my job is to try to evaluate some of the top-end talent and just provide the NFL draft coverage perspective. And, one of your former rivals, Colorado corner and receiver Travis Hunter, was one of the more dynamic players that I've ever seen. Obviously, won the Heisman Trophy. The Jacksonville Jaguars traded up to get him at number 2 overall. I love the fact that, Tory Horton's best game, arguably, at least statistically, was against Travis Hunter and the Colorado Buffaloes. Can you just talk about how excited that you and Jay Norvell and the rest of the Colorado staff was, and just basically just be like, hey, we've got our own superstar. We're going to feature him in this game. And I know that it ultimately was an overtime loss, but still, I mean, what a fantastic performance that you guys had in that game, and Tory Horton as well.
Yeah, it was a spotlight game for a lot of people. And it was a great atmosphere for our players. Coach Prime and what he's done at Colorado, you got to respect that. But you had Lil Wayne taking those guys out of the locker room. You had a sold out crowd. You had College Game Day there. You had big noon kickoff with Fox. You had everybody there, and it was the primetime game that night on ESPN. And for Tory to show up and rise to the occasion in one of the biggest games of college football just shows you what he's capable of doing. Now, we let that game get away, so that's on us as a coaching staff. But Tory, he threw a touchdown pass. he did it all. And he's just a true athlete, and he's a true competitor. And I sent him a video last week. I saw the Seahawks were out on the baseball field hitting. I don't know if they were taking BP or a home run derby, but that just shows you what kind of athlete he is. And he's a competitor at all times. And he's not going to back down or shy away from anybody.
Yeah, we get to see some photos of him throwing a ball. It wasn't quite as iconic as Gray Zabel, the memes looking like every 90s hitter in Hollywood. But we got to see him throwing around. You can see the athlete. Coach, we've greatly appreciated having the opportunity to chat with you. It's been a blast, as we do with every coach that we bring on in this NFL draft process. And you have a very unique situation because you weren't just around this guy for a year. A lot of college coaches anymore, it's like, well, I coached him for a year. You were around him for a long time. You helped recruit him to Nevada. What is the best Tory Horton story that you can share us, just to kind of give some insight to our listeners that are diehard Seahawks fans, what Tory Horton brings to the table?
Best Tory Horton story. There's a lot. One just off the top of my head, I don't have a specific time. It's not like he was a goofy dude where he's making the whole room laugh. I'd probably say, one time he was frustrated on how we called the Colorado game this past season, because we went back to some of the plays that worked the first year, and he came in to my office and in the head man's office the next day, and he let us hear it. He feels a certain way. He's not going to back down. He's not going to just walk in, but, oh man, I'm okay with that. He felt a certain way, so he let us hear it. He voiced his opinion, yeah. But it's because we respected his opinion so much. You know what I mean? It's not like he was stepping on our toes, telling us what to do as coaches. He felt a certain way, and we respect his opinion and value his opinion, that he was going to let us hear it, that we didn't call our best game as coaches.
And I think the best coaches, they have certain vets, whether it's college and NFL, that they lean on like that. Your players have to know that you are willing to listen to them
100%.
in order to get them to buy in. That doesn't mean every player in your team can just walk in the office and tell you, well, I hated that play call or whatever. But you have those set guys that you can't. Coach, it has been an absolute pleasure. We've enjoyed having you on, and hopefully you get to enjoy a fun season, first year at USC, and also get to peek at Tory Horton, hopefully making some plays for the Seahawks in 2025.
I'm always in this corner. Yeah, you guys got a Seahawks fan now with you guys having Tory. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and best of luck to you guys.
Best of luck this season, Coach.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys.
That was Chad Savage, the receiver tight end coach for USC, formerly coached Tory Horton at Colorado State. Special thanks to him for jumping on with us. When we come back, it feels like it's been like 80 years since the Seahawks have had an all-pro selection. Rob and I are going to be discussing which players heading into 2025 have the best odds to break that drought, particularly with the first-team all-pros. We'll be diving into that coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, can't-miss moments, and major momentum shifts. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first bet for $5, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes it so easy to bet, whether it's picking my favorite team in a matchup or diving into player props for teams still remaining in the playoff hunt. From Tyrese Halliburton seemingly every night making game-winning shots to Chet Holmgren's thunderous dunks in the paint for the NBA Finals-bound Thunder, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into the same game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com today and claim your $250 in bonus bets. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. And a special thanks once again to Colorado State, former Colorado State receiver coach and current USC tight end and inside receiver coach Chad Savage for joining us in our NFL Draft Coaches Series. Rob, let's shift the focus back to the 2025 Seahawks. And it feels like it has been a long time since the Seahawks have had a first-team All-Pro, and it's been 4 seasons, and that might not seem like a lot, but in today's NFL, and especially considering during most of the 2010s, the Seahawks had at least one first-team All-Pro selection on their roster. This has been quite a drought, and the fact of the matter is, aside from Bobby Wagner, there has not been another Seahawk that has been named first or second team All-Pro since the COVID-impacted 2020 season. And listen, Pro Bowl is still an honor, but it is not. All-Pro is the prestigious one. That is the one that really has the most respect from players, from coaches, because it is not a fan fest. It is not a popularity contest. It is the best of the best selections. That's what you want in your resume. But it's been so long since the Seahawks have been able to say, hey, we had a first-team All-Pro this year. 2020 with Bobby Wagner being the last time. So we got to talk about who has a chance to potentially end that drought in 2025. And so I'm going to give you the mic here first. Which player do you have as your highest odds to break that trend to be a first-team All-Pro for the Seahawks this upcoming season?
Corbin, I think that you have to start the conversation with Leonard Williams because, frankly, he should have been an All-Pro last year. You know, I think that anybody who saw the way the Big Cat played, the way that he was a disruptive presence, almost, snap in, snap out, as a sacker, as a tackle for loss guy, as a, pick six guy for a man at that size. I mean, he had the splashy plays that generally can force the media that aren't paying much attention to just acknowledge that, hey, they play pretty good football out in Seattle as well. So I think that there are a number of quality candidates that we can be talking about. But for me, Leonard Williams is the player that I think is the most logical candidate to be an All-Pro in 2025.
And I would second that, although I think, look, sacks are really hard to replicate at the defensive tackle position from year to year. And I'd be stunned. Maybe he gets to 7 or 8. I'd be kind of stunned if he got to double-digit sacks again, quite frankly. And it's not saying that he's going to be any worse. It's just that tends to, with defensive tackles in particular, that tends to be more of a regressive stat from year to year. It's harder to maintain that than it is, say, for an edge rusher that purely that's what his game is built on. So I'm going to go with a guy that hasn't gotten a pro or an all-pro nod yet to this point, but he's on this defense. Devin Witherspoon in year 2 with Mike Macdonald. And I talked about this a little bit on the first episode we had on Locked On Seahawks Day with the mailbag questions. And again, great questions from you, our valued listeners. But I think getting him on the boundary a little bit more, does it take away your chances to have him blitz? Yes. Does it take him out of the run game a little bit more? Yes. But I think it also opens the door for more opportunities for him to make plays in coverage, particularly having opportunities to get his hands on interceptions, which he hasn't had very many of those to start his career. He's had one, and he took it back for a pick 6. Teams have been selective about when they throw the ball at him. But I think if you have him and Reek Woolen as the 2 boundary corners, and you have either Kobe Bryant or Nick Emenwari playing the slot position, that teams are going to be in a position, well, we got to pick our poison. They're going to have to take their shots sometimes at Devin Witherspoon. I think this is the year 2 in Mike Macdonald's defense, year 3 as a player. I think this is the year that we see Devin Witherspoon take that jump from being a great player to being an elite player. And it's going to show up on the statistics. And I do think playing a little bit more on the boundary, he's still got to use him some of the slot. He's got too many skills not to do that. But I think playing him more on the boundary is going to provide the opportunity for him to be able to get more ball production and potentially get the interceptions. And that, unfortunately, that is what voters look at, is the stats. As good as he's been, we haven't had the ball production, at least from an interception standpoint. I think that changes this year in year 2 in Mike Macdonald's defense. So I have Devin Witherspoon as my first pick to be the guy that gets first-team All-Pro odds.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Devin Witherspoon was the other player that I was strongly considering for all of the reasons that you just talked about. The lack of big plays in terms of interceptions. I think that he's going to get more of those opportunities playing on the outside a little bit more. I expect him to double, triple, quadruple the number of career interceptions that he's had to this point. As you said, he's only had 1 so far. I do expect him to get several this upcoming season on the outside, because again, that's where NFL teams are going to be throwing the ball. He's going to be playing opposite a ball hawk, a proven ball hawk, and Tariq Woolen out there. And so I do think that there are going to be more opportunities. And if Devin Witherspoon gets more opportunities, I think that some of them he is going to win. And so very excited about his possibilities. I'm going to mention a player who, again, has not had a lot of Pro Bowl votes and frankly, finished last season, last several seasons here with some durability concerns. But if Kenneth Walker III can stay healthy this year, and if the Seahawks have the much improved run blocking that I expect them to have, if they have the quarterback and the receivers who are going to be, frankly, a little bit more in tune to the running game and blocking at least the receiver position downfield than some of the receivers that Seattle has had in the past, then I do think that there is a possibility for K9 to go absolutely off this upcoming season. So he is another player that I definitely want to mention. And finally, we're almost remiss because sometimes in the kicking game, in the special teams game, we don't want to mention those players, but Michael Dixon should be an all-pro candidate year in and year out. I think you can make an argument Jason Myers as well, but certainly Michael Dixon, to me, he is a special player that if he were playing in New York or Dallas or one of those big-time NFL teams, again, we're talking about perennial all-pro at this point.
Yeah, I would second you with Michael Dixon. I had him down as my special teamer because he should be in the mix every year. But this is what's crazy. He has not been a first or second team All-Pro since his rookie season. He was a All-Pro that year and a Pro Bowler, and then it's really been shut out ever since. But when we look at statistics, he is year in, year out, one of the very best at pinning teams deep, being consistent with net yardage, and giving his coverage team a chance to get downfield to make plays. So he should be in the mix every time. On offense, I'm going to throw out a name, and this might surprise a lot of our listeners, but if you have seen pictures of Abraham Lucas recently, the guy is healthy. And I don't have the record sitting in front of me, but if you look at his rookie year, the one game that he missed that season, the Seahawks lost. Then his second year, he missed a bunch of games with injury. The Seahawks had a losing record when he wasn't in the lineup. This past season, very similar situation. Abraham Lucas playing at right tackle with his athleticism, being healthy. We know he can move. The relative athletic score was in the 90th percentile. The guy is a top athlete. He also brings nastiness that this team has missed way too much with him being on the sideline the last 2 years. If Abe Lucas can stay healthy, that is always the big if. But looking at him, I saw some people saying he looks too lean. He looks like a machine right now. He looks like the kind of guy you want at right tackle or left tackle. Abe Lucas is my dark horse to be a second team or even a first team All-Pro at the right tackle position. If he can stay healthy for the entire season, I think this scheme is the perfect fit for him because he's got the athleticism and he's also going to be able to seal and finish on those wide zone runs. And I think that he's a guy that, when healthy, is a solid pass protector as well. If they run the football better and their pass protection holds up, Abe Lucas is going to be a big part of that. And hey, he's going to do a contract year. Guys have a tendency to have their best seasons when they're going to a contract year as well. So I'm not predicting he gets it, but I would not be surprised. He's my dark horse.
Well, it makes an awful lot of sense. I think that's going to be music to the Seahawks ears and Seahawks fans' ears because, again, the offensive line really is the key to this upcoming season. Everybody knows that. John Schneider knows that as well as anybody, having invested this past first-round selection in Gray Zabel, the earliest the Seahawks, of course, have used in a draft pick, in the interior offensive line since the great Steve Hutchinson. Abe Lucas is the linchpin. Everybody's going to focus on Gray Zabel or at the center position. If Abe Lucas isn't healthy, then everything falls apart. If he is, then he is justifiably going to get an awful lot of credit, and that might result in that All-Pro vote.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Also, make sure to check out Emerald City Spectrum, www.emeraldcityspectrum.com. We also have a YouTube channel where we've got plenty of Seahawks content as well as Storm, Mariners, Sounders, every pro and college team in the region. Make sure to check that out. We will be back with a Blue Friday episode tomorrow. I'll be joined by Nick Lee. Make sure that you are tuning in, and thanks for listening. Go Hawks.